Thank you, and thank you to all the open micers for reading today. Our second feature poet reading is Sara Burnett. She is the author of Seed Celestial, and it's available right over there for sale. Sure, she'd be happy to sign it for you. It was selected by Eileen Myles as the winner of the 2021 Autumn House Press Poetry Prize. Sara is also the author of a chapbook, Mother Tongue, which appeared a few years ago from Dancing Girl Press. Her poems have been published widely by many magazines, including Barrow Street, Copper Nickel, Matter, and PANK. She holds an MFA in, I'm guessing poetry. All of it. All the writings. She's got an MFA in all the writings from the University of Maryland, an MA in English Literature from the University of Vermont. Previously, Sara worked as a public high school English teacher and an immigration education nonprofit. In addition to writing poetry, she also writes picture books, and she lives right here in Maryland. Please welcome Sara Burnett.
Hi, thanks so much for coming. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you for all you guys for being here. Happy Mother's Day. How are you feeling about it? I know it can be a mixed bag. But like I said, I'm very delighted to be here. And I'm reading from my book today, Seed Celestial. You can think of Seed Celestial in kind of three themes that I write a lot about. One of which is climate change. The other one is motherhood. And also racial and ethnic identity. I focus a lot of it on myth, and I'm assuming a lot of you guys are writers, so I don't have to do a lot of explanation of some of the myth. But one of the myths I focus on is the myth of Demeter and Persephone as well. The first poem that I'm going to read to you is called Endling. Oh, and I also should say, you'll see a lot of my kids in these poems. They're 3 and 6 years old. Endling. There's a man who cares for the last snail of its kind, Achigneva apex fulva, knows precisely how much moisture, shade, and light it needs to thrive while it spends its dwindling time in a glass cabinet. Don't think about what you can start, think about what you can end, was the advice I heard on a time management podcast while slicing bananas for my daughter's breakfast. The banana comes from Guatemala, where its kind is plagued by the fusarium fungus to a possible, almost certain, if it continues at this rate, extinction. I've never been to Guatemala, seen a rotting banana plant, or touched a snail's glossy shell of the kind that resembles the palate of a chocolate box. Dark brown, chestnut, white, the occasional splash of mint. I watch my daughter collect stones in her plastic bucket, clinking them beside her as she runs smiling from one corner of our yard to another. Impossible to say if this July is the warmest month since the last warmest month until it is. My dread a garden crawling with invasive insects. Later, she smashes bananas at the table between her dirt-crusted fingernails, laughs at the stickiness while I try to finish the article I started days ago about Achigneva apex fulva, whose largest threat is, you might have guessed, another snail. Eulandia rosea, aptly named for its rosy-hued carapace, who will follow the slimy trail of its gastropod cousin, then yank it from its shell with its serrated tongue and swallow it like Cronus, shell and all. When a species is the last of its kind, it's called an endling, a word that reminds me of changeling. Such a fairy swap child I've called my own. I've made this place for her, warm, soft, a place that someday I'll not be allowed to enter, that may not even survive me. So one of the ways that I write about climate change and being a mother puts like an extra layer of urgency to it all, is to write it through the myth of Demeter and Persephone. And of course, if you understand that myth, you realize that when Persephone is abducted into the underworld, it's where they gave rise to the change of the seasons. So it's kind of a perfect metaphor for climate change. So some of the poems are persona poems, and this one is Demeter's Wager. At first, it didn't seem horrific. The earth dying as I felt, if I could, like dying. I stopped eating, dressing, coloring my hair. Then I grew sick of the trees, the way they, full and green, mocked how I felt, so I stripped them bare. After that, it was easier to let go. Slowly, I gave away my belongings and hers, shoes, belts, coats, still wearing her scent, books with their dog-ear pages. Then meadows, estuaries, streams, forests and their forest creatures, whole species of birds and fish. It was almost eerie how light I felt when I didn't care for Earth. Every day, no surprise. The sky, the color of lint. When I thought finally there's nothing left to save or throw away, I remembered I had all eternity, an empty glass to fill. I couldn't shrink it, so I expanded it, the way a bruise on a fruit rots it entirely. At some point, we're all deceived. Some days I hear her voice in the kitchen. Other days, only my echo. Call it grief or despair, it doesn't matter. Every day I kneel down and feed it. Bless this rash of fires, this flooded city, this cracked, parched earth. So all the water, all the salt, all the spoils of this world, hear me say, I am your daughter too. So one of the other topics that I write about that is featured in this book is being the daughter of a Cuban immigrant. So that's of course is about being a mother to my own daughter, but it's also being a daughter. My mother came from Cuba in 1960. And for me, Cuba is also a land of myth. I've never been there, but I grew up with many stories, and there were such amazing stories. Things China hidden in the attic, all these mansions that you could go back and visit, just complete stuff of lore. And so this poem called El Regreso, which is Spanish for the return, speaks of that. Under the orange glow of the flamboyant tree, they talk of El Regreso, while sipping espresso from paper demi-tasses, and at a round table after dinner, after dominoes, they will talk of El Regreso, of old Cuba, of old Havana, of all things old, at a round table after dinner, after dominoes. Do you remember the lechon? Do you remember tres leches cake? Hombre, we never feasted better. Nodding, the men agree, puff on cigars. Do you remember how they sent our brothers to be slaughtered on Playa Girón? They straighten the pleats of their guayaberas, lean into their chairs. No one starts to leave. Shall we have another round? They straighten the pleats of their guayaberas, lean into their chairs. Plumes of smoke rise from their cigars, resting in ashes. And the china I hid in the ceiling before we left, do you remember? Niña, it is theirs, it is yours, all of it. Plumes of smoke rise from cigars, resting in ashes, under the orange glow of the flamboyant tree. This next poem I'm going to read from is called Ethnic Arithmetic. If you listen to the slowdown, it was just featured, which was like amazing, by Major Jackson last Wednesday. And Ethnic Arithmetic is a counterpuntal poem, which means that it can be read in three ways. If you can see, you can read the left column and the right column, and you can bring them together, so it makes like almost like a third piece of music. And it relates to just filling out those college application essays. Anytime you have to check off those boxes, it can be, for a lot of people, pretty frustrating. Ethnic Arithmetic. Again, I check ethnicity boxes, as if I could measure with a stick figure to derive the crude dimensions I'd wanted to keep separate as black beans and rice, never together. My mother's sign, it's how a true Cuban eats them. Her quick smile betraying some part of me quiet, another confused, as though, like her, with a doll and suitcase forever in hand. She rubs the white of her forearm with two fingers, a gesture I've learned conveys superiority that says, look at me, I belong here, not there. Check guilt, shame, denial, check every cliche. Write fractions half and half next to squares, a type of equation. Devise an algorithm of my identity. Those parts, moros y cristianos, nunca congri, never together. But you don't have any accent. Who am I to know who I am? Sliding back and forth invisibly, and because of this, and maybe only this, which feature to cover or show, as if a distinctive mark, a curl of tongue, a darker jaundiced eye, check what's fair, what's not I know exists to erase me. Again, I check ethnicity boxes, write fractions 1/2 and 1/2 next to squares, as if I could measure with a stick figure a type of equation, devise an algorithm to derive the crude dimensions I'd wanted of my identity, those parts to keep separate as black beans and rice, moros y cristianos, nunca congri, never together. My mother's sign, it's how a true Cuban eats them, but you don't have any accent. Her quick smile betraying, who am I to know who I am? Some part of me quiet, another confused, as though sliding back and forth invisibly, like her with a doll and suitcase forever in hand. And because of this, and maybe only this, she rubs the white of her forearm with two fingers, which feature to cover or show. A gesture I've learned conveys superiority, as if a distinctive mark that says, look at me, I belong. A curl of tongue, a darker jaundiced eye, here, not there. Check guilt, shame, denial. Check what's fair, what's not. Check every cliche I know exists to erase me. The next poem I'm going to read is called Primary Source. And it really, a lot of this comes, not another identity, it is of course becoming a new mother, which completely upended my world, at least personally. Primary source comes from that. Primary source. A teacher of mine once said, every writer has only 4 or 5 subjects. There's happiness in repetition if you don't hear the seconds ticking. What's worse? Dedicating yourself to failure or denying it again and again. Patcher's pupil, a Renaissance carver, perfected the pine folds of St. Margaret's robes using a large axe, then several smaller ones, then sanded and painted her in fine detail. Did he ever think, where did the time go? She stands at the back of a church in Tyrol, a dragon writhing under her feet. What do you live for? The quiet before sunrise, or the moments after? The baby coos in her pram. I've always wanted to use the word pram at least once in a poem. Now that I'm a mother, I have a better understanding of terror and the miraculous. Who will she be when she's grown? Do I have time to shower? If, as a famous writer decreed, it takes 10,000 hours to achieve mastery, I've perfected rocking my hips from side to side, changing a diaper in dim dawn light. My baby practices sitting up even in her sleep. Her head bobs like a buoy, her eyelids shudder. My teacher said sometimes your first line is your last line. What's more, the moment she walks or the moment she falls down? Looking again at the photo, the dragon lies curled at Margaret's feet. I'm holding an image of an image someone else carved in my hands. She loves it when I sprinkle my fingers down on her like rain. I'm holding the rain in my hands, and in my hands, the rain holds her. The next poem I'm going to read is a poem that came out of the pandemic, and it was me and another mother poet writing to each other. and it's Letter to Another Mother with excerpts from the Handbook on Mothering, which no one receives anymore, but by which we're conditioned to believe exists, and without which we're damn near harmful to our children. Where it might read on page 1087, to soothe swollen neck glands, dip buttered toast in warm milk, watch the yellow globules float to the top of the milk skin. Which even as an image I find comforting to imagine, but what can I tell you about the blank page under the entry active shooter drill? Where would I start? I guess with guns in schools and churches and Walmarts next to backpacks and hermetically sealed organic baby food pouches. I guess with bulletproof vests, security guards, checkpoints, lockdown drills, 911 calls to parents from closets saying maybe their last goodbyes. I guess this wouldn't be a standard entry, a typical poem, a normal time. Do you remember when that was? Last week I learned to knit a scarf and then a hat. It seems like something mothers do. A canvas for thank you cards for my daughter's second birthday and to Dr. Blasey Ford. Knitting helps pass time, even dark times, gives my hands something to do, and they want, desperately, something to do. Hands that did swaddle an infant offer a finger to suck, but can't protect her from the haze of hate and fear which governs every breath in the present. Hands that want to be useful, beloved, worthy. Now my daughter won't wear any other hat. I guess you could say I feel kind of proud, like I did that, I made that hat, I made that child, having carried that body inside my body, then watched that extension of myself drift away like a future I'll never see. A rain shower happening in a desert, a spoon dipped into a cloudy bowl of chicken noodle soup made by an artificially intelligent machine. Page 440. To clear a stuffy nose, boil a broth from leftover carcasses, necks, livers, add chopped vegetables, simmer and strain. There's something about seeing your future in front of you, quite plainly stumbling over rocks, tree stumps, getting tangled up in socks, and knowing you failed it before it ever had a chance. I've done some good things too, though. Don't you wish trying was enough as we tell our children it is? I've purchased BPA-free plastics, checked for parabens, phthalates, pesticides, prepared her body with the prescribed amount of vaccines, thin but essential protections against diseases, pestilences, but no, it's not a shield for bullets, a boat for rising sea levels. It won't prevent raging wildfires, droughts, food shortages. I no longer seek perfection or expect to do any better collectively than our ancestral empires. There's something about sleeping in these times. I don't do it well. Do you? What's your trick? There's something about feeling glad or talking about trees, weather, what kind of fruit pie to bring to the neighbor's potluck, especially if I want to be thought of as thoughtful, considerate of potential allergens, the harm I've already caused inadvertently, but nonetheless have caused. I've sought to make amends, but it's like patching a hole in the knee space of her jeans, gluing a wheel to a toy truck, knowing full well it won't spin again. I'm often told to save things, her first lock of hair, baptismal dress, first drawing with crayons, first drawing with watercolors, a video of her first word, ball or book, first sentence, take that away, or here you go, mama. You know, page 878, create a scrapbook in spare time, tuck keepsakes away in a box tied with a ribbon. But how to stow away clean air, a cool breeze, whales, green trees, ice cream, these things, how do we save them? And if we could have, what do we say when we're asked why we didn't? And then I read two more poems. This one's a real short one, Demeter's Remorse. All the days she was mine alone. That second before a cut bleeds clean through a white bandage, red. That summer we canned pears. I still haven't opened them. And the last poem I'm going to read is the ending poem of the book called Theory of Probability 2. And I think it dovetails nicely with Jocelyn's book as well. The moon tugs the earth through tides and seasons, but it's the earth I read that possibly shaped the moon into a pock-marked and bulged egg, forming it before it formed. I believe it. One day I caught my daughter's face at an angle, as if it were the same pixelated, puffed face first sonically rendered, her body forming before formed. I understood in that moment, I understand nothing about probability, a question of odds suggesting a future and its shape, a matter of how likely or unlikely for debris to churn into an oblong ball and cool, or for cells in dark chambers to cross over double helix spines, bloodstreams, blighted fields of stars. What the tide lets in, lets out. Thank you.